for now, I'm going to introduce everyone to Chad. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me here today.
So you're in town for Created for Love rally. So tell us a little bit about that, and then we're going to catch up with you and your family and what's been going on.
Well, basically, I'm going to be speaking about my son, Eli, and his story. My wife and I received the prenatal diagnosis somewhere between 16 or 20 weeks of pregnancy, showing he had a birth defect so severe that 80% of the people who receive it choose abortion, and my wife and I chose to pray for a miracle. So there was a Catholic school community that I worked in at the time, and I continue to work in now as a theology teacher, that really came together and prayed for a miracle for my son. And you know, we had little miracles along the way that showed God was present with us, you know, never taking our suffering away, but being with us in it. And I'm going to share that story with the young people after, I think, Jason Everett and another chastity speaker are going to talk about chastity with them.
Great. Yeah, Sarah will be there. We're going to share some pictures of that talk on Tuesday's show. But I know you have a little video that Eli requested that you made, so we want to take a look at that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Basically, Eli approached me and he said, you know, Dad, when you go do your talks, can you know, put this out there? So I thought it was a really nice way to kind of promote the books, and it's showing that even though he was supposed to be mentally disabled, you can see he's very cognitively aware, and he's like any other normal second grader. So.
Yeah. And so the last time we saw you was about 2 years ago. So tell me what's been going on with you since.
Eli had a major surgery.
There he is now.
There he is on the camera, yeah. He had a major surgery when he was born, and he had a few more after that. So this video was taken not long after the last one.
Yeah. And what made him want you to share this with everyone?
I think he just, you know, he really believes in the story, and he believes that he understands that God's using him in a way that, you know, draws other people to himself. He's an instrument for God.
Sure. And you're working on a new book with a publisher. So tell us about that. It's
the third in the series. In the first book, Waiting for Eli, I just shared the initial story about our journey after discovering the prenatal diagnosis. In the second book, Eli's Reach, it was really about how Eli was an instrument used to make God's work visible in the lives of other people. And in the third book, it's about how God did that with me. As he continued to grow as a father and a mother, kind of biologically take a child from infancy to adolescence into adulthood. It's how God spiritually led me along a journey, spiritually from infancy, adolescence into adulthood, that kind of parallels our growth with Eli, and how I went deeper into my Catholic faith, was led out of a social studies classroom and now into a theology classroom at a Catholic high school.
Sure. I remember when we first interviewed you, you said this very dramatic thing, which was, I never thought I'd want to have a child with a disability. And that, coupled with the statistic you cited over the number of abortions, and we know babies diagnosed prenatally with Down, only 9 out of 10 of those, only 1 out of 10 of those children survive. So how can we tie that all into Respect Life Month and your journey with Eli?
Well, I think the beautiful thing about Eli's story is that it really reminds us that what we do is not who we are. And I love the idea that as a Catholic, you know, we can understand that we're not just a body, we're body and soul, we're a whole person. And just because Eli can't produce and consume and do things the way other people do them in the world today, doesn't lessen his value at all. It actually increases his value, because we all have handicaps.
Sure.
And we're able to hide them, you know, but he can't hide his. So when you get past seeing what his handicap is, you can't miss who he is. He's a child of God. And as I said earlier, he's an instrument that's been used to make God's work in the lives of other people visible to them. Had 2 couples, one around the age of my wife and I, and a teenage couple that I wrote about in the second book, who didn't have an abortion as a result of a poor prenatal diagnosis like we did. I've had a prisoner on a life sentence who had wandered away from God, came across the original story, read the story, and was moved to pray for the first time in 25 years. So those kind of things that happen, I'm going to be talking about that Sunday with an audience that I'll be speaking to while I'm here in Boston as well, an adult audience. But when things like that happen, you know, God can use everybody as instruments to bring people to himself, but I think he uses people with disabilities in a way he can't use other people who are quote-unquote normal in society to do that.
Yeah, there's so much to be learned there. It sounds trite, but it's very, very true.
No, it is very true, for sure.
I'm really interested to hear about how you express this to the high school students that you work with in the school where you teach, because it's a difficult message for kids to hear when they're so accustomed to, well, do whatever makes you comfortable, do whatever makes you comfortable. How's that been?
Well, I think as a theology teacher, one of the things I do in the classroom with them, and I'm kind of bringing this out in my new book, Growing with Eli, and how God did this in me, is he moved my soul away from a subconscious and cultural adoption of, I'm going to reject sacrificial love, self-giving love, to embracing it and taking a participation in it. And I try to encourage the students to understand that when they partake of the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ, they participate in perfect love. And even though they're imperfect, their love is being perfected, and that when they combine their suffering with sacrifice for the good of other as other over themselves, they're going to find true fulfillment in life. And we all know we don't get something until we give something.
Sure.
So I really push for them to have that attitude, and when they experience it firsthand in their life, they can come to see that they were created for something more than what the world says they are.
Great, and thanks for sharing that video. It's wonderful to see
sure.
him ham it up with everybody.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us where people can learn more about your work, book you for speaking engagements. Just give us the website.
Sure, it's Judice, Judice.com. And all my speaking topics and my books are there, and there's some videos. There's a documentary film on YouTube that summarizes both books, and you know, there's a promotional one for the third book. They can see all that there.
Great, thanks so much.
Find out more about the story.
Thanks so much for being with us with this great message of life and hope and dignity of the human body.